Adoption of the agenda circulated earlier in draft form to the board for approval. Just as a reminder to trustees and to the public, we're still test driving a new agenda format, and because of that, we have a little bit of required yet quirky procedures to go through to accept this new particular format until the time comes, if and when the time comes for the board to make a more permanent change. So to that, item 1 is to suspend the procedural bylaw requirement, and you see the recommendation.
Move the recommendation.
Thank you, Trustee Grinham. Do I have a seconder?
Second.
Thank you, Janice. Any discussion? All those in favor? And that's carried. The adoption of the regular meeting agenda is recommended. The recommendation is there before you.
Move the recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Donna. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Under Section D of our agenda is a consent agenda there are, if you note on the left-hand side, there are reference points that were in the package that trustees and the public have. It identifies where there are briefing notes. The intent of a consent agenda is to be bundled through as a group. It's not something that we pause and spend any time talking about because the information is self-explanatory. Having said that, should any trustee see something that's currently listed on the consent agenda that they would rather have discussed under board business, then that will be moved as requested. So the consent agenda is before you, and you see the recommendation under item 4.
Motion to adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing, seeing none. All those in favor? And we're off to go. Section E, we had an in-camera meeting. We talked about personnel and legal matters. And this takes us to our presentation and delegation, and may I turn it to you, Madam Superintendent?
Thank you, Chairperson. It's our great pleasure to welcome some students from Lake Trail. This is a group of students who are working in a new model at their school this year, and we've had the great privilege as senior staff to be in and out of Lake Trail several times this year and have been impressed by the work that students are doing. And these two particular students we've seen several times. So I'd like to introduce to you the principal of Lake Trail, sitting beside these two young people. The acting principal is Dean Patterson, and Dean, I will leave it to you to introduce your speakers, give us a framework, and you have 10 minutes. And a PowerPoint and
this room on time.
Yeah.
Lake Trail, we've undergone a number of changes both structurally and systems-wise to try to make school more meaningful for our students, to engage them more, and to allow them to be more successful in their studies. We have a number of things. We've introduced a new student marks management system for our teachers, which allows students and parents to access student information online and see what kids' marks are. It allows us to easily determine what students are missing assignments, and we're striving to have a policy where no students have work that isn't complete. Every student completes all of their assignments. And to facilitate this, we also institute have electives, as most middle schools do. We also have our exploratories, which are like a mini elective. They are cross-grade. They allow us to offer students much more opportunities than in a traditional elective offering, trying to connect kids to their passions. We have a timetable which is really strived to blend the best of the elementary setting and the best of the secondary setting, so that we try to not be particularly rigid in our timetable, yet still allow specialist teachers to be the main instructors for our students. Have organized our grades into pods, so we have basically 3 primary teachers who are responsible for all the instruction for the students at that grade level. It's allowed us to integrate some projects into our delivery. It's allowed the teachers to really work close together as a team to really support the students in the work that they're doing with them. And the last last things that we put into place is a regularly scheduled inquiry block where the students are multi-graded again in groups of about 20 with teachers who are assisting them and helping them to pursue an area that's of a particular interest for them. Try to connect them with their passion and help them pursue that passion. A couple of people with us today. Dave Randall's with us today. Dave is one of our most skilled inquiry teachers. And he has worked with these two, Joe and Rachel today. And they probably exemplify what we wanted to accomplish with the inquiry work that we're doing. Both of them came in with different ideas and have pursued those and went far beyond where we would have hoped they would take those things. So, Rachel, if I can ask you to go first.
Hi. So we had to go ask a big question, and my question was, how can one run a nonprofit organization? So I got started, and this actually started before the inquiry questions, but I wanted to carry it on because it's my passion. And I started a nonprofit organization raising and advocating the homeless. I spoke to the city council. I had a live interview with Bruce Williams. And as I'm going through this learning process, I'm learning about constructive criticism, balancing my time wisely, and basically just learning all the things you have to do for my organization group. What I'm doing right now this spring is a project called Restoring Hope, and I am making care kits to give out to the homeless. And I've been in contact with hotels and dentist offices, and people have started giving us toothbrushes and hair and shampoo cleaners. The logo, Gimme Shelter, was created just by fooling around on Corel Draw, and I've learned more about Corel Draw. My public speaking skills, because of this, have gone a lot better. I'm more comfortable speaking in front of people. Even at school, with presenting projects in front of classes, has helped me. If I didn't have my inquiry, I don't think I would be at the place where I'd be right now. I've grown, and helping people is my passion, and turning this into and working this and having a passion has changed my whole outlook on what I want to do with my life. So,
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
My name is. My name is Joe, and my question was how can I learn how to think as a cook? And learning how to think as a cook has always been a large goal for me. I always wanted to learn how to think as a cook. And this summer, I guess before this inquiry, I tried to teach myself how to think with a cook. Didn't go out so well. Then with this inquiry, I wanted to learn to finish off what I started this summer. And when I started this inquiry, what I started with was research. And while still learning everything about research, I still learned other things, not just about painting, but other skills, color theory, art, other artist history, as well as not just research, but practice experience. So I didn't just sit down and feel it. And for the future, I'm planning on already.
Please show us. Please show us.
For two paintings that I did, 2 landscape paintings. Or one of them, both are from famous Canadian painters called Group of 7.
Favorite painters?
Thank you.
I'm a Lauren Harris fan. That's one of my yeah, nice. Lauren Harris, great. Nice.
And I started a series on jobs that children shouldn't be doing right now. And since this one's on a child soldier, it's the color of the soldier is based on a toy soldier, which is what a child should be playing.
Joe, can you? That's good.
And for the future, I'm hoping to continue my skills in painting, except I'd like to learn more, not just painting, but learn another style. Maybe oil painting, water painting, as well as other art styles. For instance, that one's on street art. That's on street art. And
Perfect. Thank you.
Couple more
Am I
minutes.
doing for time? Am I allowed a couple more minutes?
The youth of the world have as much time, the adults less. Oh, you're good. You're good.
Just a couple of points. Making this happen has been a big learning curve for all of us, and we don't think we have it perfectly right. We're quite excited about what next year will bring and how we can tweak this and how we're going to adapt it and make some of the changes. And that and all of the changes we've made, we probably couldn't do without the time we've carved aside for ourselves with PLC time. We think that the inquiry work that we're doing and the other initiatives we've put into place are having the desired effect. Because we have students who want to stay. We have a group of students who are going to stay for their grade 10 year. We're having great success with our academically. We have 185 of our 245 students with B average or better right now. So we're seeing some of the payback for some of the things that we put in place. And we're quite excited with what we have, and we're excited where it's going to go, and we're excited by what these kids have started and the others and where it's going to take. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you very much. Trustees have any comments for students or for Dean?
I spent quite a bit of time there as the liaison, and it is a great school. And they're just doing amazing things and continued passion for supporting the students.
And Joe, maybe it's time for a plug. There's a art show coming up. You have a date set for that yet?
Sometime in May, but we are holding a charity art exhibit so we can raise money for the nonprofit. And it's something that Joe and I can both get involved in because I have a nonprofit and Joe does the art.
Good stuff.
And was there a desire to have an outdoor wall that could have painting on, I heard of? Yeah.
Brace yourself to the emails for the other.
I'm ready for that.
Peter?
Yeah.
I was going to ask Joe, I know nothing about painting. What is particularly difficult about acrylic? What's special about it?
well,
You open the door.
basically a new form of paint. It's a new form of paint. So it's just a long time ago they used to always use oil paint, which was oil based, and now acrylic paint is just like water based paint. The acrylic contains acrylic pigments suspended in an acrylic polymer, but that's what causes. And acrylic paint is a fast drying paint. That's what separates it from oil paint. That's kind of the difference in oil paint. That's why most artists prefer oil acrylic than oil paint. Except at the same time, because acrylic paint is newer, they don't really, they haven't had it for a long time. Most artists don't really trust in that as much.
Okay.
Rick?
Yeah, well, two things. First of all, probably something that you didn't recognize is you're already starting business strategies, which is well beyond what the expectations would be. And second of all, I just want to congratulate both of you on a wonderful presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great.
And on behalf of the board, I'd echo that. Very much appreciate you taking time out of your day to come and speak to us. I can't impress upon you enough how valuable it is and how welcome it is for trustees to hear from students, from activities in the school district. We deal with a lot of business-type things, and this is very refreshing and helps anchor us in sort of why we're here and gives us lots of feelings of optimism for things that are happening in our schools. So thank you. Okay. And as I did mention to our guests, they're more than welcome to flee the building. And no offense will be taken.
You're welcome to stay, but
you're welcome to stay. Mr. Patterson, of course, does need to stay right to the end.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
All right.
You're great. And you'll let us know about the art show. We'll put it on the website. Rachel? We'll share.
Very cool.
Send that one down. Yeah, we'll share.
Thank you.
We'll share? Okay, I think we're going to...
Okay,
Thank you.
we'll move into item G, collaborative engagement. And again, just as a bit of a reminder, because this process is still relatively new for us, is collaborative engagement below strategic engagement and engaging the community are references or linked directly to the board's strategic plan, and we have compartmentalized that in a way to allow it as a bit of a placeholder for us to put relevant items, and in fact encourages us to put items in those sections for more robust and detailed conversation. So under collaborative engagement, we have the Education Committee report. Trustee King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You'll see before you the minutes of the report, and I would like to acknowledge the Cumberland Elementary school community and graciously hosting us and the wonderful presentation that they gave. Part of the goal of the Education Committee is to go out and visit the various schools in the community to find out what's happening, and this is ongoing, and next month we'll be at Miracle Beach. As many of you are aware, we are looking at the calendar next year and possibly having a PLC on some Wednesday afternoons, and trustees have some questions with respect to what does that mean and the positive impact that will have on our students and on our community. We were able to ask some questions to a panel of educators that were able to come out that evening and gave us some questions and answers. And I'm actually going to turn this over to our Assistant Superintendent, Mr. DeMay, who's my co-chair of the Education Committee, unless he wants to pass it on to the superintendent, just to maybe highlight some of the questions and the comments and concerns that we had one parent talk about busing, some of the other issues that we had, and maybe trustees can just bounce on that, what we had on that conversation.
Sure, thank you. There was some of the presentation, I just want to go back, and PLCs have a bit of a history in our district going back to Aspen Middle with principal at the time, Charlie Schellenk, who's currently at Daniel. And Mr. Schellenk was able to share with us some of the successes and past successes that PLC model brought during the tenure at Aspen and over the years where it's evolving now at our high school. So that was one of the points. Some of the questions that came up around busing, some of the things that we were looking at, we're in discussion around busing to see what that will look like, what it could look like next year. They've had late bus runs in the past, so we're looking at all avenues to see what will work for our sites. The other question that came up was around concerns with things for children, for students to be engaged in, and the commitment that we've always made is no child will go home to an empty house, if I can use that term. I've just been in consultation with the Boys and Girls Club this week around programming at some of our sites and engaged in quite a lengthy conversation with a follow-up happening immediately after the break We've bantered some ideas back and forth. The next level will be some discussion with the buildings to discuss what opportunities they see and where they can fill, and working with our schools. So those are some of the questions that came up and some of the work that's being done behind the scenes to this point.
Thank you. Do any of the trustees have any more comments or questions with respect to this? Because it was a very good presentation for the staff.
I must say, I just thought the hearing from the teachers directly and their experiences, and some of them, asking questions that were about concerns or misgivings, they answered so eloquently, so passionately about what it means to them and their professional practice and what they bring to it. I thought that was really a great opportunity to hear them. I know the previous meeting I didn't think we'd had enough time to discuss, and this meeting really met a lot of those needs. And so I hope that information gets to parents of the schools really effectively, because I think that any misgivings they have will be really allayed, and that the commitment to making this just a next step for student success was really clear. I appreciated that panel. We're pretty amazing representatives of what our teachers are doing.
Peter?
I had an interesting discussion with some of the people on that panel. Jen Turner, who's the chair of our district PD committee, and a couple of the other teachers. The suggestion was made that the district PD day in future might want to have quite formal connections with the various professional learning communities around the district. So that could be a day for the PLCs to strut their stuff, if you like, for their colleagues who are not familiar with what's going on school by school. And there were two or three, I think, of our pretty high-powered teachers who thought that would be a very interesting modification of the typical PD day.
The only comment I'd like to make is that very enjoyable, very instructive, and a process that's certainly enriched by the participation of our staff, but even more so enriched by the participation of our community. And just as a reminder, Education Committee is a public meeting, and the advantage that it has over this type of a forum is, while it is still a formal, quote-unquote, meeting, it doesn't have the formalities that this public board meeting does, and it really does allow trustees and the community to engage in a different type of a conversation. So I found, in particular, the parents that participated and engaged in the conversation exceedingly useful.
Yeah, just a point. I was at a Cumberland PAC meeting last night, Cumberland Elementary, and they spent about almost a half an hour talking about PLC and about the presentation. So even though their present system doesn't marry up with what is being proposed by the school district, they're quite willing to adapt that. And the general conversation from the parents there was very positive last night. Just thought that'd be of interest.
Move to receive my report.
Second.
Correct. All those in favor? And that is carried. If we move to item H, which is reflected on the top of page 3 in your agenda. Item 1 is the 2013-14 school calendar briefing note, which is right on page 16 in your package. Assistant Superintendent Mayo.
Thank you. So the briefing note highlights the process where we're at. Under Bill 36, 30 days consultation is required. Therefore, the consultation process will end March 28th. And because of our spring break, we were able to gain approval from the ministry to have the calendar passed in the first week of April versus March 31st, and submitted the day after the proposed calendar that the board passes. So there is, the consultation process will continue and the online feedback form will continue until the 28th of March. Below you can see the things that have happened around that. The two education committee meetings which have occurred February and March have been devoted to the topic around the PLCs and the effectiveness in our district, and some question and answer opportunities were also afforded folks. The online feedback form, which has been created, and people have been visiting and sharing comments and questions and observations regarding not only PLCs but the calendar in general, the whole thing. We've had them all on. To our understanding is schools have engaged their PACs in discussions around this, not just over the past month, but this has been something that has been on agendas for a while. Center Voice went out informing parents of the online feedback form, and we have continued to put information and any useful data that we have up on that website for folks to consider. So based on that information, the recommendation is there from senior staff that a special board meeting open to the public be held Monday, April 8th from 5:30 to 6 with one agenda item, that is the school calendar.
Move
you.
recommendation.
Second?
Thank you. Any discussion? Just again, comment I want to make the clarification is the April 8th date was chosen because we have a board meeting tonight and it's too early, and our next board meeting is too late. So it's not like we're trying to jockey for position. It's just April the 8th is the date that works best in terms of the deadline imposed by the ministry. Okay. Hearing, seeing no discussion. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Provincial district initiatives. Briefing note.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, if you could go to item number 3. I must have been in a really bad state when I did this, and the grammar is terrible in the last sentence. I should bring it to your attention, but it sits poorly with me. This is a great opportunity for our district to have a voice in this work as the early years are developed. If you could make those changes, it would be so much better.
That's too many changes.
At this time, I just would like to say that School District 71 is very involved in the provincial initiatives, and I think it's important for you as a board to know the kind of work that we're doing. You know that the ministry is undertaking a huge change in the curriculum, and there's a number of things happening, and where do we fit in that? And so I wanted to take this opportunity, if I could, to start off by telling you that we're so proud in number 1 of the Strong Starts and our 5 Strong Start centers, and we've been asked to host the North Island Pro-D session for all Strong Start facilitators. And they could have chosen any school district in between, but they chose us. And we're happy to host that and to facilitate that, and we're hoping to have about 60 of our Strong Start people from all of the northern part of the island here, and we'll be at Glacier View that day on May 31st. And I put that in there just so that if any of you wanted to come by, we'd love to see you there, okay? The second one is in the new curriculum, and you know, you've heard the work around the competencies. Our district has been asked to become the 9th region to develop a team around the communication competency. So we'll be working with Sharon Dorosky, who is a well-known person in the province and in Canada around assessment. And so Tom and I are just in the process of forming a team of K-12 teachers. We're really proud to be asked to be part of this work. This is huge for us, but not only is it huge for us, it also helps us bring back to you and to our district what's happening with the new curriculum, with the assessment. As I was saying to the elementary principals, this is the work that will guide the future, and we're excited to be part of the people authoring this work. Provincial Committee on Early Years Framework, Carol Walters, who's your district lead teacher in literacy, and she works on the early years work with me. She's been asked to be part of the provincial conversation and committee on the early years framework. Huge to have her voice on there. So again, another person that's participating in this work. In number 4, Maureen Dockendorf, who's the superintendent of reading. You've read about that new initiative that the province is doing. She was very insistent that I put only 10 people were invited from the province. She said, your board needs to know that you're representing, you're one of the 10 in the province. And I was flattered that they asked me to come and be part of this and be part of the provincial committee on the new curriculum and assessment. So I hope to be able to report back to you as we go along what's happening. You're kind of going to have the inside track, okay? And the last one is Changing Results for Young Readers. This is the program that the government has put. They just announced they've refunded it to the tune of $10 million. Every school district in the province except one, and I wouldn't want to be that one district that didn't join this group. We've been working on looking at best practices around making sure that all of our children can read. So we have 3 schools that have been working on this. We've had teams from each school, and we've had 7 focused collaborative sessions. Great work that's come out of this committee, and I was so excited to hear that it was going to be funded again, and we'd be continuing the work again next year. Maybe not with these 3 schools, maybe not with these teachers that are in these 3 schools, but that work will continue. And we're finding out some incredible things. We're part of this wonderful inquiry project in the province. And I thought it was important, and Sherry and I talked about you needed to know how involved School District 71 is in the province. Any questions?
Trustee Green?
Yeah, on the changing results of young readers, I hope that you do look at other schools in our school district, because there seems to be a bit of a flow between those 3 schools. I recognize that, but I think we need to look at Comox, Cumberland, the regional areas as well, because they would probably appreciate the help and be just as excited.
Thank you.
Well, recently I think we heard that there were some cuts to the funding for literacy programs. The district was a big part of Literacy Now and establishing that network, and they've recently been cut. How does that interact with the work that is happening in the schools? It seemed like it was really successful, and is that something we should actually be communicating to the government, that we might like them to support the funding for that program? Do you know?
So one would think that by the nature of their titles that they have literacy in them, that they would be connected. They're actually not so much connected. The cuts to the literacy program that you're referencing are the cuts to the community-based literacy program that we're a co-partner, co-funder of. And what was cut was a big network of funding. It's called Dakota, and it's an organization that funds usually community partnerships. When school districts became, it dates back to about 6 years ago when we became responsible for a brief period of time for libraries. Do you remember when public education was responsible for libraries for 2 years? So we were tagged with the literacy piece of the library. Now, the operational piece of libraries went back to whoever it rightly belonged to. The literacy piece stayed connected to districts, in that we were to loosely manage the community literacy strategies for each community school districts were. So we have a wonderful partnership with all the literacy agencies in our community, which are usually volunteer, amazing folks. We partially subsidized with our funding, and then the funding that was coming out of Dakota, a community literacy coordinator. And across the province, Dakota chose to withdraw a significant portion of their fundings across the province, and specifically on Vancouver Island-wide. And so there was a political gasp about a month ago, and we've been writing letters, and the community literacy partners have been writing letters directly to a number of the ministers responsible. It's not necessarily the Ministry of Education. Dakota is not connected to the Ministry of Education at all. It's connected to some other government sources for funding. So we've been doing our bit around advocating for reestablishment of at least partial funding for that. And we joined Vancouver Island School Districts in partnership with their partners writing letters. And there has been a little bit of response back that they hadn't quite understood that there would be this groundswell of pushback. And so there may be a time, and we are primed to come back to you for a letter from the board. We just it caused enough stir that there was enough talk back from their funding source that it might be partially refunded. So I would suggest that maybe coincidentally in April, just before perhaps the provincial election, we might be back in front of you asking you for a letter of support. But we need to give them a chance to respond.
So it's certainly, I mean, those programs, I know how valuable and how much time the district could put into it because it does impact the younger people at home and adult literacy as well.
And we're also responsible for the annual report back. That's the irony of the loose. We are responsible for the loose framework of the community literacy plan, but we are actually responsible for the writing and the establishment of the plan, the assessment of the plan, and submitting the plan to government every year as a school district who's responsible for all of this partnership. So it was a bit of an aha moment when 2/3 of the funding for the coordinator's position went missing.
Nothing to report.
Nothing to report.
Yeah.
So we're thinking that some of it will come back.
Trustee Caton and then Mr. Douglas.
So the paper on the cross-curricular assessment, is that the report the ministry came up with asking for some feedback on how to assess students? Is that the one? Talk about the curriculum assessment. There was, and I don't have the name in front of me, there was a 29-page document the Ministry of Education sent out on assessment and asking for input. Is that the committee?
Are you talking about item 4?
Yes.
The Provincial Committee on Curriculum Assessment has not been formulated yet. It hasn't met yet. We're supposed to meet in May, so I'm not sure about what you're speaking about because we haven't met yet.
There's a 28-page document, and I don't have it in front of me, that came out from the Ministry of Education talking about assessment and outing for feedback, and just was wondering if that was part of that.
Quite possibly.
Okay.
So through you, Chairperson, what you're talking about is a report that came out from the ministry staff. And it actually is a broad overview of the section inside the BC Ed plan that speaks about the need for changing how we assess student learning when we're actually involved in different teaching methodologies and different curriculum. It's a bit of a benchmark paper in that this is it has more questions in it than it has answers, and it's mostly out in the field for draft and feedback. Is what it's meant, and some of the feedback will specifically come from the committee that the director is actually and his team will be working on. I've seen it, I've read it. It's more of a draft. Send it out there. Here's what the general framework is, and then it's asking for a response. And you probably see it now linked to the BC Ed plan.
The reason I ask is that I've been asked through our BC School Trustees Association, part of the Education Committee, also to comment that. So I will be speaking to you, Director Douglas.
That's correct.
I thought you were going to say you're going to be on the committee too.
Separate comment tonight?
I just wanted to respond to Trustee McDonald's question around the cuts. Flow, which is the Family Literacy Outreach, which is operating right now at Glacier View School, has a wonderful, wonderful program. And it's on Thursdays. And we've kind of given them a big part of the school to do this. And there's lots of parents involved in it. And they're doing cooking and life skills. And there's little children that they bring with them. And they're in the gym doing things. And then there's some training that's going on as well. Dakota came last Thursday. And the 2 Dakota people were there. And they watched what was going on there. And they spent the entire afternoon there. It would be very hard for them to say, we need to close the door on this program, because they saw the need. It was just perfect timing. So I think they saw it in action, which is harder to close something when you see it and see what it's doing and seeing the needs it's serving.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Douglas. The next item is referenced on page 18. It's an email that I received from the Comox Valley Social Planning Society, and I received it as chair, and Because it has two requests on it, I thought it prudent to put it on the agenda to get some direction from my trusted colleagues. The sort of uncomplicated request is an invitation to attend an event this Friday to participate in or to bear witness to the rolling out of the Comox Valley Quality of Life Report. The second piece, and this is what really got me to put it on tonight's agenda, is the request for a contact person for the Social Planning Society. So I confess when I initially read that, my sort of knee-jerk response was, well, I think that the board chair should be the contact person. I'll field whatever information comes through. I didn't read it as sort of wanting board representation on the Social Planning Society, et cetera. I thought I would bring it here and take your good counsel and direction. So you have it before you. If you have any comments. If not, I'll proceed as I thought.
I would concur with your comments.
Sure.
Well, I think that it's a valuable organization. I've attended on other hats for quite a few years, and had used the quality of life reports in previous versions for work that we were doing at the Healthcare Society on Harvey and Denman to do planning and program development, and so it's quite valuable. The society has regular meetings at which they're usually just a brown bag meeting at which there are representatives from most of the municipal councils. Area directors and political people are showing up, as well as agency people. So it's a chance to do some sharing of common concerns and potential issues. I think it's potentially a nice fit with some of the new things we're getting about health promotion at the local government level. So I'm unable to attend, but I would be very happy to be appointed as a representative of the school board, because it is sort of my thing, if nobody else very interested in, but I can't attend this Friday.
Any other comments?
Is this in any way related to your day job? Or?
No.
No. Okay.
No, it's not related to my day job. And I'm quite happy to, in previous incarnation as a trustee a number of terms ago, I occasionally participated when able in the brown bag lunches and found them of interest, and I'm quite happy to do so. And certainly, if I'm able to, would share that with my colleagues, and if anybody else wants to go, that would be fine. So I'm happy to do that.
I think it would be good to have a school board presence. There are certainly issues where it's relevant, and the Social Planning Council in the Comox Valley has been fairly quiet for a few years, but in the past they've been part of some really major initiatives. And in Victoria, for instance, the Social Planning Council is really undertaking some very interesting initiatives in partnership with the Victoria Foundation and the university and the municipalities down there in terms of addressing lots of issues. So it's valuable work, Tom, if you could go.
Yeah, I think in the past we've used some of the things off the report for some of the planning for the school district, and I would be very comfortable having you as the contact. I think that makes a lot of sense, and you can disperse the information that's required.
Okay, thank you for that. Very helpful. Move on to good news items.
To you, Mr. Chairperson, on page 19 and 20. As always, we have so many things that we can share with folks about what's going on in schools. This is just a reflection and a snapshot of some of the many things that are going on. It's nice to see a good balance of elementary and secondary. It's harder to get the reports out of secondary, so it's kind of nice when they actually do send us stuff, or particularly when we ask for it. The only other thing I'd like to add to this is that you'll see under the GP Vanier Secondary School that the grade 11 students were able to attend the Building Bridges. We call it the Village Workshop, and it's the most amazing workshop. It's usually done in the big house on the Comox First Nations traditional territories. Just 2 weeks prior to the Vanier students having the workshop presented to them, all the principals and vice principals on our February Pro D Day were in the big house having the very same workshop. It was a great experience for principals and vice principals and senior staff, all senior staff. It's a very insightful, thoughtful, can be quite moving and emotional workshop, and it speaks to the effects of residential schooling on Aboriginal peoples, and certainly helps us understand as educators and leaders the connection between those experiences and the daily lives of the little ones that we have in our care now. And though it sometimes is hard for us in the immediacy of the day to make those connections when we think, well, that happened in the past is very real for many Aboriginal families still, and part of one of the things that we always want to be mindful of, and we are mindful, and we always feel that we're not as successful as we'd like to be with our Aboriginal families, is despite our efforts to welcome them in our schools, to have them present in our schools, going through a workshop like this helps to remind us why they may be reluctant to be connected to our schools, and so we have to remember that. The grade 11s found it of great value. I had some feedback from the school and from some of the kids directly. They found it very insightful. In fact, some of them talked about how they knew that there was in their own personal family's history maybe something that was connected to this, but still no one is talking about it. And so they got this factual, real, live content delivered by elders who come with a very hopeful message, a very positive message about residential schools moving on piece. And so we certainly are going to try our best to get as many secondary students, it's more a secondary curriculum piece, to that workshop, Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal, in the coming year. It was incredibly worthwhile, and we will have them back again for many other of our secondary students and hopefully our secondary staffs. There were some teachers that actually participated in the morning of the Pro D Day as well. So that's just something I wanted to bring to your attention. And then finally, in addition to everything that's before you on the 2 pages, if you had opened up the newspaper, I believe, today and yesterday, you'll see that once again, School District 71 has some very successful VEX students, Vancouver Island. The robotics, they're off to globals again. And these are students from Mark Isfeld, and just was talking with the principal of the school, Jeff Taylor, and communicating with him, and we've managed to fund those boys and help them get everything that they need so that they can attend and show their skills. And we expect them to enjoy the experience very much and do very well at globals. Our Valley students always do. So hopefully at the next meeting, I'll be able to report what kind of experience the boys had. So thank you. That's my report.
Thank you. Questions, comments?
Can I just add one little quick? Sure. Vanier Senior Improv Team is off to Ottawa on Sunday to represent for the Nationals.
Again.
Yes, and proud mama.
Proud mama. Thank you. Thank you for it. And I always expect to be reporting good things at the next meeting.
Unpaid political announcement.
Absolutely.
It's a proud mama.
It's a proud mama. She gets to be a
Chair gives that latitude to proud mamas. Any other comments? Thank you very much. Human Resources report.
All right, so we have on page 21 the list of retirement and resignation. That's the time of year, so I'm going to read and ask requested. So we have Margot McKenzie, teacher, will retire on April 30th after 26 years of service with the district. Wendy Langdale, teacher, will retire May 31st after 18 years of service with the district. Gus Valen, a teacher at Marcusville, will retire at the end of school year June 30th after 30 years of service with the district. Debbie Williams, EA Therapeutic Intervention and Student Services, will retire June 27th after 23 years of service with the district. And Karen Ewing, EA at Mark Isfeld, will retire June 21st after 23 years of service with the district. And we have a few resignation of folks that decided not to return from leave as part of staffing. So all of the retirees will be honored at the board event in June 2013. That's my report.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions from trustees? Okay. We'll move on to board committee reports. Finance Committee, Trustee Brennan.
Thank you, Chair. Held our meeting on March the 11th. We had a presentation on technology education in our shops and machine replacements. and the board, the committee felt that we'll look at that in our budget development process. We had a monthly update on our financial report, always good news. And we had a request from District Health and Safety, and the recommendation is, I think I want to predicate that by saying we're $300,000 to the good in our budget for this year. We're in the black. So we have some funding available. So that's the predication on the recommendation. And the recommendation is that the Board of Education allocate $150,000 from the 2012-13 operating budget to support the emergency preparedness budget submission, with funds to be spent by June 30th, 2014. And I would make that a motion.
Second.
And so these are meant to be dealt with separately? Would you prefer
Yes.
that they be dealt with separately? Okay, it's just the and further part.
Right.
It's really there. Okay, so separately is fine?
Yeah.
Any discussion?
Yes. Paul Berry has done an excellent job in doing work in the school district, looking at our emergency preparedness in all our schools, and certainly some schools are well prepared where other schools aren't prepared. Part of that is, some of it is demographics and some of the initiatives in some of our schools. So this makes an equal playing field across our whole school district and ensures that our whole school district has the emergency preparedness kits that they're going to need in case of an emergency. This, to me, is critical. And the other issue is that part of this funding, and you'll see it on page 25 and 26, which outlines the costs here. It also addresses the issue about in-service training for the entire school district. And this is Hour Zero training. And it uses common language with other emergency facilitators, such as the RCMP, fire, etc., etc. So this becomes very critical. And so when everybody's on the same page, not necessarily in the same paragraph, but on the same page, we'll get the services that we need to support the kids in an emergency.
Trustee Kagan?
So I think it's great, and I'm glad that we're doing it, but I just have some questions regarding the Hour Zero implementation and training. And who does that? Do we bring somebody in to do that, or is that part of, how does that process happen? May I ask that question, please?
Mr. Chairman, maybe we can get Mr. Berry to speak to it.
Mr. Berry, please.
Certainly, as part of the proposal, a large portion of this request is for Hour Zero, for sure. Much of the training would be done through the Hour Zero staff, but we're still in negotiations so that we can reduce some of those potential costs through having trainers here in the district, so develop our own in-house expertise, as well as using some of the expertise we already have in district to bring that program alive. So we have great expertise in terms of data management and so on. We believe that we can, even though we're requesting this amount, we believe we can probably bring that down using in-house expertise. But for the most part, the training for district staff in incident command and for maintenance staff, for example, in later district rescue, all those things would be done by the Hour Zero staff.
Thanks for clarification.
Questions? I'm supportive of this. I do want to point out that it's really important that we understand the series or the range of crisis events. I think traditionally we kind of default to it'll be an earthquake, but the earthquake is just one of many possibilities. And I also think that while the staff who are trained obviously have no responsibility or accountability for something that, let's say, happens on a weekend, as it were, but having community members with this background is nothing but value added. And it always seems like a lot of money when you go in, and it's I think for places who haven't done it and they had to deal with something and they wonder in retrospect why they didn't spend the money. So, Mr. Cunningham.
Yeah, in closing, I think that lessons learned just have to go back to the issue on Lake Trail when we evacuated Lake Trail because of the natural gas leak and some of the issues that we experienced in that, and the use of the emergency equipment that basically ensured that some of our students didn't have to go to the hospital, even though some of them had to go to the hospital. But providing shelter, as an example, using the tarps for shelter because it was, 85 degrees outside and they needed some shelter, et cetera, et cetera. So lessons learned, and, it echoes your comments as well, that it's just not for an earthquake, it's for a number of good reasons.
So on the motion moved and seconded, all those in favor? And that's carried unanimously.
Thank you. And the second part of that is, and that further, that the Board of Education approve an operating budget allocation of $50,000 for the 2014 and 15 school year and $40,000 for the 2015-16 school year for an ongoing support of emergency preparedness plan. And I would so move.
The seconder? Thank you, Donna. Rick, do you want to start off?
Yes, well, it just would make sense if we're going to invest this amount of money into emergency preparedness, we need to do the follow-up to ensure that the program is going to work. And it also provides that support for health and safety so that ensure that it does work. Thank you.
Questions, comments from trustees? I have just a procedural question, if I may. Passing budget expenditures in out years is sort of more like crystal ball budgeting.
Correct.
And it's not something that we've normally dealt with. We may have, but I just can't recall. And I just want to check on that. That's
We're just trying to pigeonhole you.
Yeah.
It's certainly if the board is able to make these motions, and then through Robert's Rules of Order, a future board could do a reconsideration of it and address it at that time.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Part D, Information Technology Update.
Okay, so you have all received the presentation in regards to our IT plan for the future.
Go through it in detail.
Do you want to go through it in detail?
I think it's important. Yeah.
Okay, before we make the recommendations? Fair enough. Go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, and the board, starting on page 28 is a briefing note for you. We've had an opportunity as a board in camera to have a presentation to look at our technology, and the Finance Committee has had, I believe it's 3 meetings where we've considered the technology. Some background of the information here is included in the top of the briefing note. In there we make the statement that most of the technology is old or near the end of life and is reducing the innovation and acceptance of the technology. This morning I was provided some information from our district principal responsible for technology, and I'll just share some of the survey data that we have. So we've had 364 staff members respond to the survey. When asked the question about the speed of the computer is adequate, 79% have indicated no. That the speed of our internet is adequate, 78% have said no. That the computers, laptops in my schools work properly each time, 78% of the respondents have said no. And that they believe technology enables the instructional environment and improves the student academic achievement, 74% said yes. So what we're finding from the survey of our staff is that the vast majority of them are indicating to us that the technology that we currently provide them is inadequate, and that they do believe it as a critical component of student learning. As we look at the background information and we're talking around supporting the 21st century learner, in our presentation to the board, we had spoke about equitable access to technology. That gets to bandwidth and speed of our networks on the island versus in the town versus out Miracle Beach. Looking at the changing role of the teacher to support learning, and also that we have the technology to support the personalized learning pathways as they unfold in the years to come. Of course, we need to make sure that what we do is sustainable both from an educational, operational, which is the running the IT department, and of course financial perspective. In the funding proposal, what you have in front of you is a request for a one-time $4 million purchase of information technology hardware. This would include everything from servers and switches and workstations and peripherals and bandwidth and voice over IP phone systems. It would be a complete rework of our budget. We're requesting the $4 million as a set fixed amount, that the scope of the project would be modified if necessary, and that we would not exceed the $4 million amount. However, we do believe it is very sufficient, that the $4 million will allow us to address substantively all of the items that are coming out of our study. Last June, you may recall, you approved a $4.1 million request to access our restricted capital, and the Minister of Education approved that. And inside that was $500,000 for technology. So we are looking to apply that $500,000 towards this purchase price. The Finance Committee considered the feedback that the board gave at our last opportunity to talk about this, and has moved away from requesting any operating reserve funding, that we would preserve the operating reserve for future operational issues and not investing it into the capital costs of technology. So the request is around accessing $1.75 million of our local capital reserve. This is money that can be spent on capital at the sole discretion of the board. And further, that the board approve the expenditure of $1.2 million from our restricted capital reserve. Now, restricted capital requires the board approval, but it also requires the Minister of Education approval to spend the money. At the bottom of page 28, we highlight what the reserve balance would be after, if this is approved, after the expenditure. We would have $292,000 remaining in our local capital, and we'd be down to $23,000 in the restricted capital. Over on page 29, we've presented this in two ways. Because the Minister of Education has the ultimate say on whether we'll be allowed to access the restricted capital, we thought we should put before you both sets of numbers if he does or if he does not. So the top section is looking at the effect on the cash flow, the expense within our operating budget. If the minister approves the restricted capital use, you can see year 1, 2, 3, and 4 has no effect on our operating budget at all. That the capital funds made available would offset the costs for those years. And then in the later years, we would start to see the increased cost on the operating budget as the technology needs to be refreshed. So technology will last for 8 years. What we're looking at is an 8-year plan here that would include 2 hardware refreshes. The second number underneath it, where it says without approval, you can see that it would only be the first year where we would have no operating budget impact, and then we get into some reasonably significant dollars in year 2 through 8. The difference there adds up darn close to $1.2 million, and that's what we're requesting from the restricted capital. At the guidance of our superintendent and showing her brilliant financial skills, it's the put money in your piggy bank theory. So what we're proposing is that we develop an equalization strategy where we put money into the piggy bank on the years that there's no effect on the operating budget, and in the years later on when it gets a little more expensive, we would draw on that money that's been set aside. So the average cost with approval is $271,963. And what we would do is we would appropriate that amount into a restricted reserve. And you can see year 5, where we see the $126,000 effect on the operating budget. You see a lower amount being put into the piggy bank. And then in year 6, 7, and 8, we would draw money out of the piggy bank to equalize the cost. And we've done the same thing if the minister does not approve the $1.2 million. So there's a $136,000 difference between the costs of how much money we'd need to stick aside in that piggy bank, depending on whether we receive minister approval or not. Now, if you look on page 30 and page 31, it's just presented graphically, the cash flow for you, so you can look in year one, looking on page 30, for example. In year one, we would, this is on the premise that the minister does approve the $1.2 million. We would spend $291,000 from the restricted reserve, $1 million from the local capital, and $500,000 from the restricted capital that was already approved. And so this is how the cash would actually flow out, but we would equalize that through the contribution to the restricted reserve. I am able to report that we've been working hard with the ministry staff to seek their understanding, approval, and on this request, and they are favorable of our request for the $1.2 million. We've developed a letter that if the board approves this, that our chair would sign, and they've had an opportunity to provide input as well, and so we have a level of confidence that the staff and the ministry support this, and hopefully that would translate into the minister also providing his support. And as Trustee Grinham was indicating at the bottom of the page 29 is a recommendation. My recommendation to the board is that you consider these three as one and not separate motions. What the motions are doing is the first one is establishing the $4 million one-time purchase. The second part of it is the $1.75 million of our local capital. And the third part is the $1.2 million of the restricted capital subject to minister approval. And this motion would indicate that if the minister does not provide us with the approval, then we would modify our procurement method to lease more of the hardware, and that's what was built into the numbers up above. Certainly address any questions that the trustees may have, and we have our district principal, Mr. Moore, with us as well.
Okay.
I assume, Russell, that the ministry must be getting dozens of these requests, right? Because the curriculum shift that they're talking about is going to be very technology intensive, right? So they must be getting this. Have you heard anything about it?
I would, from the response, I would think not. Certainly, I think other districts would be accessing their local capital reserve, and that doesn't require the minister's approval. But we've caused them to have some good discussion and under exactly what you're saying to develop an understanding of how capital funding can support the curriculum goals. And it's important to them that the capital piece be behind the wall stuff, not the hardware desktops.
Is this being discussed?
Yes, so some of the provincial work that I do, I connect with superintendents from all over the province, and certainly on the Lower Mainland. We may be one of the few districts right now on the island that is that far advanced in planning, and though we are telling you that, and rightly so, that our equipment is dated and it has reached its shelf life. We're very well aware that we have colleagues on the island who don't even have the luxury of having old equipment. They're not that far along. On the Lower Mainland, some of the superintendents in the bigger metro locals are submitting very similar plans because they have massive undertakings in school districts like Vancouver. Vancouver is looking at all kinds. I was just at a meeting on last Wednesday. All kinds of new technologies for use in their schools, and within their operating of their school district, they are piloting a program called PeopleSoft, which is a huge management system for them. So everyone's at different stages in it, but you're right. The demand for not just the demand for student and people information management has changed so significantly, and certainly the demand for new curriculum is asking for new technology. So I would suspect that they will be quite well versed in this very soon if they're saying that if they haven't figured it out yet, because I know 4 superintendents, and those are Vancouver's people management information system is going to cost about $12 million just to manage their employees.
That's nothing to do with curriculum at all.
Not to do with curriculum at all. Yeah, I sit on that provincial shared services committee on behalf of Vancouver Island, and this is the meeting I was at on Wednesday, and there are some movements afoot across the province for people to share bulk purchasing of things and share some services, and the conversations now are, it's all very well and good to do that, but nobody has the technology to support them right now, the new software.
Yeah, I guess one of the indicators would be for those of you who attended the VISTA conference in Port Alberni, and you visited the new high school there, and the use of tablets in the classroom and the technology that it garners, and of course the demands on the system that it garners as well, would give you a clear indication of where we're going as far as technology is concerned.
So, I guess I have a few questions. These proposed numbers don't add up to 4 million. Even when you put the 500,000 in, they still don't add up. Is that
Correct.
just magic?
No, it's not magic. What the $4 million will be the capital cost of the equipment. So what is the purchase price of them?
Yeah.
And then the cash management strategy would be a combination of outright purchases and leasing.
Yeah.
So the reason why it doesn't add up is some of the capital money will actually pay for operating leases. Is how we're doing it. What we wanted to do was to put an end on it. It is $4 million full stop, and then use the reserve money and leasing strategies to figure out over the 8 years how it's paid for. And the Finance Committee looked at 8 options, and the one that's presented here was seen as the most viable because it had the least impact on the operating budget.
So we must currently have technology costs in leases in our current operating budget?
We do not, no. What we're basically doing is that on a cash basis, we have about a $650,000 budget for IT, which includes all the technicians and staff and supplies.
Yeah.
And an awful lot of our equipment has been gifted to us, and not a large investment over the last few years.
So this is going to be extra dollars in IT from our operating budget?
That's correct.
And we have a tightness in our operating budget that is suggesting, as it has in the past, that we need to do program cuts?
And part from a technology point of view, the strategy to keep it away from the operating budget as much as possible, which is what this does.
$600,000 is a good chunk.
Well, in year 1, 2, 3, and 4, there's no financial impact at all on the operating budget. That the capital investment covers it, and then in year 5, there is an operating budget, but there's an opportunity for replenishment of capital reserves, and potentially in year 5, 6, 7, and 8, that cost could be brought down, but we don't know whether those funds would be available.
So, it's kind of like, I just hate to see our slim operating dollars into a really substantial amounts like this, and yet leasing, especially when you're dealing with computer equipment, the stuff is so, quickly out of date that buying almost seems kind of, so we're talking about.
So what we're looking at is there's certain hardware like servers and routers and switches that make the whole thing happen. Tend to have a longer life. You can generally get 5, maybe even 6 years for those. But the workstations tend to cycle out technology 3, maybe 4 years. And so what we'd like to do is own the equipment that has a longer life and be in a position to lease the equipment that turns more quickly. So the way a lease works is you go to a leasing company, they own it, they provide it, you pay them money. At the end of whatever term we have, we simply phone them and say, come get your equipment. And then we can enter into a new lease that would refresh the hardware. So what we're finding right now, and it's indicative in the surveys, is that our technology is quite old, 5, 6, 7 years, the workstations, well past their useful life. And then we want to be in a position where those will refresh frequently so we can stay with the technology from a user point of view.
So this whole report, I use computers all the time and I see what it does with kids, but I want to see dollars going into nature study and outdoor and art, and if this is, I just say let's shut it all down and send them outside to play.
Duly noted.
That's my first reaction.
Just a little footnote. I was in an elementary school PAC meeting the other night and made some comment about the workstations around the room. The principal said, and more than half of them have had servicing already this year. The stuff is just so old. My Lord.
I have a question, okay? I'll go to Jazz and then
So I guess the question that I have is, or comment is, and this is from my going to the Provincial Association with School Trustees, my understanding from the Ministry of Education and having the Deputy Minister speak to me a number of times is, if we have the money, we need to use it. Is that, or we're going to basically lose it to other avenues? So I'm just wondering if the impression, and I'm quite comfortable with the money staying in my district for my students and my staff, and I'm being very selfish about that. But I'm just wondering if the feedback that you're getting from the ministry is that if the money is in our bank account, they may come along with their little two fingers and use it elsewhere.
Probably less of a concern that they would take it and use it elsewhere, but from a provincial point of view, certainly they've been encouraging school districts to meet our needs with our reserves that we have. It's very difficult for them when they go to Treasury Board and there's hundreds of millions of dollars of capital reserves sitting in 62 school districts' financial statements, and they're trying to get money. So we've been, as you know, last May, June, we spoke about facility enhancements, and now we're speaking about technology enhancements and looking at ways where our technology could serve our students better.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to remind the board as well, our mainframe is 10 to 12 years old. And if you talk to any of our IT people, they will tell you that they're continually trying to Band-Aid the system because some of the equipment they have in there, they can't find replacements for. It's because they just don't manufacture them anymore. So it becomes a point where the model, you just can't buy replacements for the model. So is there any other discussion?
I have just one comment to make, and that's around the getting technology is great. I've been part of lots of organizations about technology. One of the challenges that the demographics of the people who use the technology ranges from those who are technological residents to me, who's like a technological tourist. So I need point like on a feedback inquiry, I may make a whole bunch of comments around it's not working for me, which has maybe something to do with the technology, but also something to do with just how my capacity or whatever. So part of this is also to ensure that people develop a skill set, have the opportunities to develop a skill set.
Probably to pat this district on the back on the strategy over the past many years. Many school districts early on ran out and spent hundreds of millions of dollars on technology and not building capacity. This district took the opposite approach and has been focusing on capacity building within our staffs. And now we're talking about matching the technology to that capacity. So I believe it's an ongoing issue, and certainly our district principal in technology will be dealing with that. But I see this district in very good position to take advantage of this investment.
Okay.
So we'll, as the chair of the committee, I'll move the recommendation as a bundle.
Second it.
Okay. Any additional discussion?
I just want to say that I'm actually going to support this, because when I look at supporting something, to me it comes down to the student in the classroom. And when I hear the teachers in the community asking for this, it goes back to what Trustee Grinning says when I was in Port Alberni, and I saw the impact that an iPad had on a 6-year-old student who was not doing well in class, who could not manage sitting down with his classmates, and how this technology had a student to the point that he was able to socialize with his peers and be able to become a student and engage with that. To me, I think really, really speaks to how this is going to impact our students in a positive way, not only students but our teachers. And I want the money used in our district for our students, so I think it's a great one-time investment.
Can I just ask for clarification on that point? I didn't read this as this is iPads for students.
We're in the middle right now. There's a dual track going on. One is the financial arrangement. The second one is the study that IBM is doing and working with our educational staff.
But what it means is that the child in the classroom with the iPad will be able to have the base to actually to use it.
Right now, we don't have the answer a complete answer on where the strategies are going to be going from an education point of view. But this report that IBM is working on will certainly inform that discussion.
Okay, thank you.
I'm actually really not ready to support it at this time, and that's partly one of my concerns, that I'm getting the sense that there's a proposal being developed, and this $4 million will be the maximum, but it may be, you're assuming that it will be enough, but it might not, and that might mean, are we going to be 10% less than what we're really looking for, 50% less than so it's not $4 million then isn't a fixed amount, and so I don't feel that comfortable with it. I think our kids have a lot of screen time already. I think that it's a lot of eggs in one basket, and there are other baskets in the district that I have, other capital baskets that I have an interest in as well, and I'm just not comfortable, but that's where I'm at this time.
Thank you.
Just to speak to that, we've engaged IBM Canada, Cisco Systems, and Xerox Canada to come in and do a very comprehensive current status of our technology. These are three multinational organizations that have worked with, I think, 18 school districts in BC already on this, and so they have a very good understanding of where the study is ultimately going to take us. They gave us a very comprehensive indicative price estimate for it. The $4 million is slightly less than what they had told us by a couple $100,000, but we know they had contingencies in there twice that didn't need to be booked. So we are very confident that the $4 million will make a very significant impact on the school district, and that we will substantively meet the goals of the technology plan.
Okay, so...
Sorry, I need to respond. As much as I agree that we need green time, but we also need screen time, because that is where the tech, where...
Well, there's the headline.
There's the headline.
I see the writing back there.
However, the whole point here is where we're going in 21st century learning, and that's what it's about. I mean, we just can't shut it off and turn a blind eye. But I still think that, the challenge is for our schools to ensure that kids get green time just as much as screen time.
Before calling the vote, my assumption in this, and I think it's the board assumption, is that we will receive regular updates as to where we are in the process. Okay. So,
Just one final point from my experience at BCIT in the early days. All these technology gurus who came to that institution at that time said, if you don't buy equipment that students will see when they graduate in their workplaces, forget it. And the same applies here. If our students don't have access to the very best technology we can find for them, when they go to work, they will be second best.
So, on the motion, all those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Thank you. And final recommendation, that the board receive financial committee report. Move the motion?
Yeah, I'll move the motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Votes unanimous. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Policy Advisory Committee?
We've suspended during the board governance review. We'll look at the policy manual, all of us, and continue on after that.
Okay, thank you. Transportation Ad Hoc Committee?
Minutes are there.
So there. There's a recommendation. You want to move the recommendation?
I don't think there is a recommendation, is there?
To receive for transportation.
Oh, certainly. I'll make that recommendation.
Seconder? Thank you, Rick. All those in favor? And that's carried. Under board business, inquiry update.
We have nothing to report this last meeting.
Okay. We'll move on to item 2, which is 2013-14 Carbon Neutral Capital Program.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 34 in your package, 34 and 35 is a letter that outlines the 2013 Carbon Neutral Capital Program, the CNCP. What is not included in your package is information that our approval for the $45,000 is for Mark Isfeld. It's a boiler replacement program. The government is putting $5 million into this initiative, which is basically equal to the carbon contributions that the school districts are making to the fund. Two sources of fund. Number one is $400,000 going to 43 school districts. We are not a part of that because we receive one of the BC Hydro Energy Specialist funding. So we were excluded from that. The $45,000 that we are receiving is coming from the $4.6 million for school district projects. The next paragraph talks the primary consideration and ranking for CNCP projects are emissions reductions and simple payback period. That is clearly where our grant came from, because we are not supplementing this project with any other funds. Over on page 36 of your package is a capital project bylaw number 126595, labeled 2013 Carbon Neutral Capital Project in the amount of $45,000, and as usual, we have our 4 resolutions to consider this item.
Okay, I have the recommendation for you. Any trustee want to make the first motion?
The capital project that the board approved by the ministry and specifying a maximum expenditure of $45,000 for project number 126595 is hereby.
So I think we're going to need to read from the...
Sorry.
From the agenda?
Where?
So I'll make it.
Okay, go
Okay,
ahead.
the recommendation that School District Number 71, Comox Valley, adopt the 2013-14 Carbon Neutral Capital Program Bylaw Number 126595 in the amount of $45,000 receive its first reading.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing, seeing none. All those in favor? And that's carried.
I'll continue on. That School District Number 71, Comox Valley, adopt 2013-14 Carbon Neutral Capital Program Bylaw 126595 in the amount of $45,000 receive its second reading.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing, seeing none. All those in favor? And that's carried.
That the board unanimously agree to suspend the requirements of the School Act and Board's Procedural Bylaw 2007 to have the third reading at a subsequent meeting.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? Hearing, seeing none. All those in favor? And that's carried. And finally?
That the School District Number 71, Comox Valley, adopt 2013/14 Carbon Neutral Capital Program Bylaw Number 126595 in the amount of $45,000 receive its third and final reading.
Second that.
Thank you, Janice. Discussion? Hearing, seeing none. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. And we move to item 3, which is a proposal brought forward by Trustee McDonald. It is a notice of motion, which will appear as a motion at our next public board meeting. Thank you for attaching the briefing note to provide trustees some context and opportunities to review and formulate comments and or questions for the April meeting.
So I had originally hoped that the notice of motion was the January 26th and that this would come forward as the motion, but that's not how it's appeared on this agenda, and that's fine. But is it useful to have a briefing note with the notice of motion then? And will people read it, hopefully, and have a discussion? There is, I had hoped that by having it at this meeting as a motion, and if approved, there might be an opportunity to actually have a preliminary meeting before the end of June. I'm concerned that if it hits the end of April, by the time we actually have any meeting with the community schools, it will be moving to the end of the year. And this is in a response to a letter from 2011.
So the motion will appear on the April agenda, and the board will determine the yay or nay to the motion, and depending on the yay or nay, we'll wrestle with the timing, I think, at that point in time. And I certainly do note your comments or concern that should we move forward, we don't want to run out of time for this year. My opinion, and I fully acknowledge it's my opinion, is I do think that there is an advantage to having information available early in a process to allow trustees to begin to wrestle with the issue. And at least my understanding is the board's decision to really adopt a notice of motion process is to really allow for that. So that doesn't sneak up on us, and we have the opportunity, trustees have the opportunity to fully engage in the conversation.
So if any trustees have questions about what is laid out here, they are
free to contact you.
Okay,
thank you. Okay, and that takes us to the end. We have opportunities for questions from the public and the media. We'll start with the media. And public? Yes.
Hey, Mayor. I'm going to direct this to the Superintendent DeMayo. Just have a couple questions to start with the calendar.
Sure.
Could you describe the process after the online submission form is no longer available after the 28th? What happens to all of that information? Who's reviewing it? Who's access to it?
It's all compiled, goes out to trustees, and at the April meeting, the discussion happens and decisions made.
Okay. I've heard some conflicting stories about whether the calendar with the PLCs shown in it is actually going to be submitted to the province as part of the form. Is that?
I think I can answer that. Actually, what I think you may have heard is that I reported at the very beginning of the process of the calendar adoption under the new Bill 36, so a new process for all of us, which shortened the timeline. Normally, the school district would be adopting the calendar in May, and what I did say at the time is that the requirements of what needs to be submitted has changed significantly as well under Bill 36, and really it is the bookends of the calendar, not that we used to have to report start and end times for every school, bell schedules, all of those kinds of minor details. We no longer have to, and in fact, what I said was we're no longer required to actually report anything other than the minimum, the instructional time, that we meet the minimum requirements, and the bookends, like what the first day of school, where the stat holidays lie, where our non-instructional days are, and when the last day of school is. And so it isn't that we are deliberately keeping the PLC piece. We haven't even considered that yet. We probably will send everything. We have no reason not to. They just don't require that anymore.
Okay.
So that was the mix-up, I think.
And just, I guess, final question about that is to your point about the number of days of instruction. So the calendar that was presented and is online has 184 days of
This year.
instruction this year.
Yeah.
So our kids are in school for 4 hours, 45 minutes a day. Multiply that by 184, we're short by 4 hours.
So, and are you from Brooklyn? Brooklyn Elementary? You are, and we've offered actually twice now to put your questions to us by email, and we would answer them right away. And we also are going to attend one of your PAC meetings because we'll show you where the math is. I've explained it, I believe, to Anna Fleck as your representative a couple of times, and we do meet the requirements, and we'll show you where we believe that we think that the math is. Your basic math is moving it from a different place than ours. So we can either meet with you or come to your PAC meeting and describe that for you. Yeah. But we said we come to a special meeting if we needed to, once we got past it. We would do that, yeah, absolutely.
I think just to follow up, this is the superintendent's comments as well around what the board sees. As it's a public meeting, the public will see what we see. So very much like tonight's package, it will be made available.
Yeah, it will be in the board pack or something.
Just to follow on from Kathy, I'm just wondering, regarding the feedback, why it wasn't made anonymous, why it was asked who was actually writing the feedback.
So can I answer that?
Sure.
And you can finish up. We have historically done it that way always, and it's normal practice in school districts. It isn't that it is that we're trying to identify that we've met our needs around consultation in each community, that we at least see 1 or 2 representations from each school. So what it asks you for is, are you an employee? Are you a parent? And what school? Don't ask you what your names are, and it doesn't ask you who your kids are. It is one of the things we have to demonstrate is that we've actually reached a breadth of folk, and that we also have a responsibility. This feedback loop was meant for employees as well, so to make sure that we can say that there were 400 pieces of feedback. It looks like 250 of them are from parents. 65 of them are from PP, 120, my math is wrong, 120 of them are from teachers. Here's what they say. And that's the reason why we've done it this way, and most school districts do. This isn't where like people are voting, kind of, and there's a tally at the end, nay votes and yay votes. This is a feedback loop, so people sometimes write this much, and some people write this much. And so we need to be able to identify that we're catching their issues appropriately, so we would know that an issue that is described this big is coming from a parent, and we might see a theme from several parents, or we might see an issue that's coming from employees that looks like this, and it may be something we need to attend to. That's why we've always done it this way. it's no different than the surveys that have gone out in the past.
And what happens if somebody doesn't have access to a computer?
The instruction, what we've been saying to everyone is that there's free and available access at every school. That there isn't a school that wouldn't allow a parent to come in and use the computer. And in fact, right here in our foyer, there's a public computer there for access.
And I've had school administrators send me letters from parents who dropped them off and said, can you please forward this on my behalf? So I have received that as well. So
we'll add that to the package for trustees.
And the names in the summary report that we presented, the names that come in email addresses don't match comments. So there's grade, sites, there's the comments. So there's not going to be John Doe stated that. There's none of that. So when it's presented here, it'll simply be, this is the demographic, if I can use the term, grade level of students, or I work at such and such a location. These are the comments, graphs, no names will be attached.
Thank you. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Sorry. I thought you were just leaning.
As far as the technology stuff, does the provincial election affect some of those funding issues, or that's static?
The irony is we're asking permission to use our own money. So it's either given or it's not given, and it isn't contingent on the election. No. Shouldn't.
Thank you. I'm sorry for that. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. Seconded. All those in favor? Thank you very much.